Okay. In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful, and the most advanced, in honor of the original unconditional moment that all conditional moments have risen from and will return to, in honor of the world host and the system administrator of this world room. Excuse me, of this existential system. So hello everyone. I don't know how to explain it, that I'm recovering from, I guess, symptoms of a cold. I am a bit nasally, and I gotta speak at a lower volume. Hopefully it's audible. And I'll speak as to the degree that it's I'm capable of speaking. And I gotta be honest, I might cough a lot, like I've been having coughs. So. But anyways, welcome everyone. Today's episode is an interesting one. And it's one that I don't normally talk about this. I used to when I was more younger and foolish. But it's a topic that it's really experiential. It's not like somebody can talk about love and explain love to you. In the same way, like, it's equivalent to like somebody dreaming. Unless you've had a dream, you don't know, what dreams are. Anyways, I find it a privilege to be able to speak in the presence of my species, and I would say tonight's title, I can tell you that it has a universal significance. And it was just that the sentence, love it all before it's too late, there was something about that sentence where I'm like, do you know what it is? You know how sometimes your eyes, pass over something, they see something, and you don't notice what it is until a second later, and then you look back and you're like, oh, takes your attention. So, I am not some sort of infamous lover in history, but I'm someone who I can say can observe phenomena and noumenon from various angles, and that may be useful. So let's dive into this. There's a quote, that is from Khalil Gibran. Love is one can say that based on the context, many things can be loved. One can say there's different types of love, There's different intensities of love. One can even say love is unexplainable, similar to like a calling or, moments that you were destined for. I remember I gave a lecture called Defending the Lovers of the Realm. And I don't know if it was there or somewhere else. I looked at all the love stories and human history, and they're all tragedies. But they're tragedies that displayed a connection between human beings that surpassed the world itself, their condition. That means Romeo and Juliet, they were beyond their condition. The significance of their story was beyond them. Do you know? Similarly, we have Layli and Majnun, and you have, Layli was this beautiful girl, and Majnun was this, guy who was in love with her, But Majnun was in love with Layli's soul, and I think Layli's soul maybe accepted Majnun's soul. But Majnun is the guy, Layli is the girl, just like Romeo and Juliet. Okay? And I'm telling you that Majnun Layli, he tries to get married. He's in love with Layli. There's stories about him. Long story short, unlike the tragedy of Romeo and Juliet, Majnun seeks to be with Layli, but Layli is honorable to her father's will, right? And her father wants her to marry like some nobleman or something. And Layli listens to her father, you know. Majnun gets broken, and not because he believes that, Layli doesn't love him or anything like that. He just realizes that, it is clear that his presence is not required in that moment. And so the story goes that Majnun leaves. He goes to, they call it Chelenishini. He goes to, like, find his true self and all of this. And years later, long time, after, he comes back and he sees that Layli has passed away, and he goes to Layli's grave, right? And on the wall there, right, she writes, even though I don't remember exactly what he says, but I visually remember it in the sense, like, he's like, even though Layli's dead, I can hear her voice. I can hear her voice in the walls. I can still hear her voice. That guy, he it's a very fascinating story, about the complexity of, human engagement, human emotion, and its depth, right? That means it was as if for Majnun, it was a tragedy, of course, the whole thing, but for Majnun, it was as if, how do I explain it? It was as if he fell in love with a soul that from that soul it could see everything. It was like an idea like this. It was so profound. And in the same way, there is this whole theme of, two souls in an unknown world, and eventually that connection is beyond the world. It's as if the other person has become your world. Or what is that transformation? Like, I don't have kids, but I'm saying I can imagine, like, and it's like they say when a father holds his son in his hands for the first time. Do you know? It's as if the purpose, the values of reality shift. Why? Another soul has become the whole moment. At least for that father, right? I'm looking tonight, I'm discussing the complexity of the human mind, the depths that call us forth, who we truly were, and the most incredible thing. There is a quote, there's two quotes, honestly, I got to share from Khalil Gibran, guys. These quotes really had an impression on my just everything. These two quotes were so huge, right? One quote by Khalil Gibran, he says, "One day you will ask me which is more important, my life or yours. I will say mine, and you will walk away, not knowing that you are my life." You see, guys, human beings, we are presented as conscious beings that in front of our eyes have access to an outer realms, behind our eyes have access to an inner, a private inner realms, outside a public outer realms, a public outer objective realm, behind your eyes a private subjective inner realm. Okay? And it's very important to realize that we're not just living the life in front of our eyes. That our whole moment, that consciousness is one of the most fascinating energy carrier systems, in the sense that it is carrying that energy, in the space-time continuum through stories. Of course, the most, I don't know if people realize this, how fascinating, like, science is. And people might not think I would say something like this, but I have been fascinated by the way this world works from the beginning. And like just like how they say, yo man, if you go at the speed of light, there is no time. So you're telling me these photons are as timeless as the first moment they were here? That means photons don't experience time. Everything slower than them does. So the world we're in, at some point, we meet the edges of its incomprehensibility. And then human beings have to deal with how they have storified reality. They have trained beings in the outer realms, in regards to decision making, go and be responsible for a physical looping action. Yeah, but in the inner realms, they have not taught the species. This is my opinion. If sometimes I have a time traveler's ego, where it's as if I was, a general from the future, how would I get mad at myself now? That's my strategy. And really, in right now in 2026, people are not taught to be responsible for their inner life. They're only responsible for their outer life. They try to seek the meaning out of the outer life, not realizing that behind their eyes, what we all have been, hiding behind the scenes of every idea that has filled this the vacuum of our ears with meaning. At some point you will see the unknown, raw and direct. You will see it purely. You will realize everything you know. If you were to put it on a scale, compared to everything you don't know and all the ways reality works, it doesn't even get close to a balance. Human beings are trying to only balance themselves in conditional man-made realities. Yet we face, as a species, we face beyond the man-made. Do you understand? The story of the human is fascinating. Anyways, where I'm going with this was those two quotes from Khalil Gibran, okay? And I'm trying to say, guys, I know, all of you, it doesn't, like, you people don't need to act around me. I know that all of you are unknown beings in an unknown place. You've been conditioned in a sort of neural familiarity, to loop in the same localized meaning, and only when you wonder about who else you could have been or who else you can be, you break that loop. The future is so important that the present may never understand, because it's too busy, too zoomed in to see the zoomed out view. We're living at a fascinating time, an era where consciousness is wondering what to do with all of it. Inevitably, I do believe it leads to love. I do believe, like, I've known this from very early on. If somebody comes and asks me what is the most advanced form of knowledge, before I get to those Khalil Gibran quotes, if somebody asks me, like, what is the most advanced knowledge, I think, buddy, the knowledge you can read, the knowledge you can understand, it's just conditional. But we are present in the presence of a reality. Do you understand? We're in the presence of a reality that there is unconditional elements. The fact that the majority of the universe is unobservable. These guys are like, science is at the same, as fascinating it is hilarious also. And they're like, yo man, they just asked these, like, people in the past to just worship a god, to believe in a god. But what is the secular understanding asking us to believe? Do you understand? And I'm not against it. There is no battle of the ideas. We're not playing Lord of the Rings, it's like one ring to rule them all. Everybody gets cloned into one idea. No, folks. We are all present in the same context. We are different flowers in the same garden. And when we forget that we are a garden, flowers start destroying each other, you know? When you look at the soul, the best representation of it, I think, is a flower, and it's as if when the soul is in the right light, when it's properly nourished, then comes the great performances. Anyways, guys, so going back to this, I opened it up in different angles, but I'll say this. That quote from Khalil Gibran where he says, "One day you will ask me which is more important, my life or yours. I will say mine, and you will walk away not knowing that you are my life." Ladies and gentlemen, this is the algorithm for the whole world. Do you understand? That means I don't care if the person's body is conditioned in a specific way, the person's mind is conditioned in a specific way. We are present in a world where the potential of the advanced humanity is there. Nowhere in history have human beings been this introverted, this much access to cyberspace. Do you understand? Like we are at an era where the experience of identity, that means if you're in an unknown moment of being and within that unknown sphere you're experiencing yourself as like an idea, as a character in a story, I'm telling you, we're moving to the era of conscious moments. You understand? And it's like it's not many, but some human beings here on earth have realized that before any idea owned them, before any sort of subject could replace the mystery of it all, the mystery of it all was there from the beginning. That means if we were honest, we are more unknown than known. And everything has been happening on faith before we managed to make it notice time and sequence, and units. Like, you got to understand, at some point reality was just the here and now. All these new age people thinking they're getting enlightened. It's like, no, guys, you just figured out the starting point. Khalil Gibran, let me get to this a second quote actually. Khalil Gibran says, between what is said and not meant, and between what is meant and not said, love is lost. Wow. It's kind of like thinking like, okay, they're telling me to love myself. They're telling me to love this everything, love people, love systems, love ideas, love everything. But if I don't know where the world is, what am I loving? That means, how can we truly love without honesty? Honesty is such a no-brainer in this world because the person wants to work with original information. After some point, you stop seeing people as good and bad, and you start looking at human beings and being like, okay, how many beings are aware that they are simulated, that all of life is simulations, processes, lower order processes? Unless you notice a higher order process, how else are you going to see them all? Do you know? The sentence, even just the phrase "love it all before it's too late," it comes upon the deeper realizations of the world. Do you know, for me, if you know, so many people are like, yo man, how do I find my purpose? I think your purpose is found based on the intensity you're confronted with, not per se the specific content you're confronted with. Why has reality manifested in this mode? Why is the moment present at all in this way? And beyond being conditioned to see everybody as good and evil, and then realizing that ethics is developed locally, it's hilarious. Do you know? What I mean is that you will suddenly wake up one day after 12,500 days. This happened for me, it might happen for you guys, you know, after noticing how many times we're looping, how many new days, like, you know, reality is too fascinating to understand, you know. You know, folks, it's about being free. The original, the simulated, all the dualities, you know. At some point, you need to ask yourself, how long will I be an idea? An idea is just a part of my moment. My whole moment surpasses any idea. In other words, what am I? And so you truly confront the mystery of how you are an energy. Do you understand? That means they're like, yo, be honest, who are you? It's like, buddy, I'm an unknown presence of energy. I don't know how else to say it. Do you know, it's like my mind experiences reality like a field. You know, my body sees it as a sort of, you know, node in that field. It's a MMO, like, you know, instead of like a 2D screen. Like this whole mystery of the soul and all of this, guys, this ain't new news. This is always there. You know, it's just like the modernity's suddenly realizing it. Okay, that like it's like at this. How can I say it? Other than going through all that one can see. Dear viewers, I'm going to speak to you as if you're dependent on the world and you're independent of the world. Whatever kind of being class you are, you know, this is a matter of responsibility for reality. You know, and at some point we have to confront that the members of the human species are not just members of the human species. They are the presence of the unknown itself. That means I am as unknown as everything that is going on in this realm. Do you know? And God is that hope beyond the clouds of dualistic ignorance, that in some sense all conditions are maintained by a singular unconditional power. What is love can mean many things. Imagine, you know, the sentence "love it all before it's too late." It's just a suggestion. Like it's just taking your, at least it takes my attention to like, oh yeah, everybody leaves. The organic fades. I've been seeing the truth of existence in my fridge and everything that I've seen that has had an expiration date. Do you understand? What that means is the meaning of life is happening. We are the presence of that meaning. You know, that meaning arises from our presence. You know, and so for me, I could say, thinking, let's say, using a traditional sense, body, mind, soul, Love to the body can in some sense mean a sense of belonging. A sense of, they say the one you should end up marrying is the one who that feels like home when you're around. You know, whatever your soul's home is. In just the wondering about the different value systems in life, the body's love, because it's a physical form, is in the physical form. Do you understand? The mind, because it is not in a physical form, and usually for humans it's in verbal and visual form. Do you know? The mind's expression, its love is visual and verbal. Do you know? But the soul, which is beyond that notion of an original unknown force that is watching it all, is the whole moment. It's like the presence of that whole moment. I am telling you, the love of the soul is the realization that the story of yourself as a person in the world, that character in a story, what your soul wants is the secret of it all. I think deep down all souls are like that somehow. They have an urge towards completion. When I look at how human free will has displayed itself, everybody's trying to complete, their lives in an incomplete world. It's hilarious. And they show off their completeness thinking it's victory when the species fails and we hide in rooms that we haven't realized when we've been in too long. A person can love an individual position. They can love a self. They can love multiple selves. They can even love a place, and then they can love all places, the world. But at some point, we cannot ignore the metaphysical dimension. In other words, what it means is that the love for the unknown. These are the most advanced souls on earth are those who they don't fear the unknown, not out of some egoic positioning. It is those that just feel the winds of an unknown world. I don't know how to tell you. They're like, yo, man, what are you talking about in your lectures? And I've been saying, like, guys, you know what I'm talking about? How this world is even here. How we cannot use existence, what is in existence, to explain why existence exists. How mysteries are staring at us from every corner. How easily human beings think that they are just the characters in the stories they fathom. And once the species realizes behind our eyes we're a bunch of unknown beings who are trying to fit into a known world, which is actually an unknown world, okay? I'm telling you, there is a love that is limited to the self. There is a love that is limited to multiple selves. There's a love that's even limited to locations and even vibes and emotions. But then there is a love beyond the self. Do you understand? That love beyond the self is beyond not just your objective self, but your subjective self. It is realizing that, wait a minute, in the same way a beautiful symphony or orchestra, or even how a piano player plays without any, let's say, mistakes or something. It's as if you suddenly notice the melody of your inner and outer life and how they're all here, and how it's even interacting, and what sort of intelligence you are, and the depth of that awareness to that unknown presence of your own being. That is the polymath spirit. This is what they don't say. That means many people were like, yo man, Da Vinci, Tagore, it's like a bunch of other dudes or women or anybody, there must have even been polymath, like probably like okay, I'm saying it in the context of being a polymath was when a human, see, most beings, they realize themselves as a known entity and they keep themselves there. A polymath is someone who realizes it's an unknown being interacting with an unknown reality. Therefore, it doesn't matter. The experience is through the known condition. That means, how would I explain it? Polymaths are souls that have understood something about the nature of reality, that it doesn't matter what field they go in, they can find capability in. Their spirit is not dependent on what the environment allows to happen. Their direct experience of what is, you know, their pure lens. It's based on that. I'm trying to say that the world can be seen through so many different contexts. I think falling in love with the how fascinating the mystery of it is really it. There's conditional love, there's unconditional love, a superior form of love. The conditional love requires a reason to love. The unconditional love doesn't need a reason, and that usually that unconditional love is only from the creator, or parents, pretty much. I think everything has multiple can be seen from multiple angles. What does that mean? A person can love the world, but they might not love themselves. A person may love their family, but they may not love themselves. They may love others, but they may not love themselves. They may love themselves and not love any of the others. So many different ways, human beings are engaging, with the value systems they perceive, because meaning is an internal event. The world gives you the forms, the shapes, the outlines, the depth. But what the world means, that is arising from within you, from that memory trail behind your eyes, and how you've even been a being up to this point. There was a moment where I had heard this notion of like love yourself, you know. But I'm also someone who's, I can say, at some point in my life, I began becoming disgusted by how do I say it? It's like dealing with one simulation is okay. Okay. Dealing, let's say, with two simulations, unnecessary but okay. Dealing with more than two simulations, that's just like you're making an error there. To wonder what is not simulated is the search for truth. Our bodies are simulated. The language I'm using was simulated. The only thing not simulated in this moment is what's moving. It's the expression itself, where the soul of the moment resides, the force that moves. You know, there's nothing more grounding than the realization, of course, everything leaves, everything changes, you know, and what we thought was a person adapting to a world will be realized to be a moment that the world is adapting within. This life feels like, honestly, like like a video game, and what the person sitting behind the computer screen has a different experience than the screen, than the character in the screen. And instead of 2D pixelated reality, it's a 3D pixelated reality, and consciousness is non-local. Why? Because we cannot explain an instantaneous presence. Because it has no need for a reference point. The instantaneous presence, that means it's all about, yeah, from one angle you think you're a human being, a physical human being, but honestly that's one side of the coin. From the other side of a coin, it's an unknown awareness interacting with conditional and unconditional. The unconditional is more like a verb to it. The conditional is closer to a noun to it. And you know, what kind of love does a person want to have for the world? It's like when they say love the world, what does that mean? Does that mean love is the enforcement? Because, you know, love, there's a thin line between loving someone and being a dictator, by the way. You gotta love freely, you know? That's why Neo suddenly became the one. From an original reality, there was love there. Anyways, folks, I feel I'm reaching a good conclusion to the talk. See, I just had this sentence in my mind, love it all before it's too late. And I wondered about what the before it's too late part, what does that mean? And how do you love it all? Because if my conditional self wants to love the whole conditional world, okay, then that's in technically impossible feat. That means as a conditional being, I can only unconditionally love the world. You know, and sometimes really a person who's like, yo man, you know, strategically, you know, it makes sense, you know, and let's say there's love, it's like, no. The greatest strategists, you know, at the end of the battle, what do? They go home to their wives. The poet Rumi from 800 years ago, he said, your task is not to search for love, it is to get rid of all the barriers you have made against it. And I think that's the approach. I mean, that's honestly, I came to the realization it's the same conclusion an unknown being in an unknown world would have. The poet Rumi also says, before death takes away all that is given, give away all there is to give. The strategy for the human being is that you're here for some time, express yourself as that which you are. Nobody else has it as your DNA, and you're its only representative or ambassador on earth. And at some point, it's like if somebody tells me, hey man, do you love people? I'll be like, no, I don't know everybody. I can't say I love people, but I could say if they ask me, do you love the human species, I would say unconditionally, as if my soul was commanded towards it. You don't understand. It's like, what is the great victory? What do you want, a victory in a simulation, or do you want a victory in the truth? Perhaps from the truth lands, a new empire of man will arise. Humans that honor the most advanced value system on earth. That at the pinnacle of knowledge, at the peak of, the mountain of, human understanding, it's like we cannot ignore the unknown sky. Hopefully to the day where the educational system dismantle, like this idea of a student teacher will become obsolete, and everybody will realize they're a unique conscious agent, and everybody is an explorer. And then in the future, schools are just going to be explorers that get ranks. They'll have a ranking system. Like an old school teacher, like a teacher who's been dedicated their life to academia, they're going to get a medal. They're not just going to be like, all right, buddy, here's some money to live on. It's like, no. We must honor the world again, and it must begin. If you can't, think of it this way. Imagine there's a being, and this being's like, I don't love myself. It can't love itself. It's like, okay, I can't love myself. Let me see. Can I love others? And the person's like, okay, I can love others. And then, okay, I can love the world. Okay, I can love where all of it is leading. And at some point, they suddenly realize, wait a minute. Perhaps I got it all wrong, thinking that love was a transaction, and it was just when the soul felt too alive to be limited. I don't know how to tell you. I think I try to spend most of my days in the conscious waking state, being fascinated by the world. I have found no emotion more energizing. When I become fascinated for something, it's as if they're like, yo, do you want to enter this world? I'm like, yo, a new world? Anyways, folks, the whole point of it is, perhaps it's not a bad idea to love it all before it's gone. And what love means is not a conditional love where the person has to control the outcome to feel like secure emotionally. That they can be free. There's a saying, they say, what was meant for you won't miss you. And what was never meant for you, you could never have. At some point, you do acknowledge the greater presence of the system. And in one of God's names is all merciful, all loving. Only an all loving being can do that. And what does that mean? That means beyond the cruelty of how reality has been simulated, there will come a moment where we will step beyond the simulated testing zone and discover the true nature of the divine surveillance state. But how can I tell you, the mapping from before life of the afterlife is also very fascinating geometrically, the eschatology of it. But I'll say it this way, that it's like I'm gonna end it with this. I'm a simulated being here. Okay, if I want to love as a simulated being, it's going to be a simulated love, But if I, as a simulated being, realize, wait a minute, where is the original world then, and where is the simulation right now? For me, I don't know, the only courage and strength and excitement to just live in this world, it comes from just realizing. I've noticed, and I've tried to explain it in these lectures, like subtly, but there is a greater system administration to every moment. It's as if human moments don't just have a value to human beings. It's a divine surveillance state. It's like we're in an attention field. Okay, and it's not just us here. We're within an attention field. But that attention field is the original unconditional being. In other words, I don't know if people know this, but in Islam, in the Holy Quran, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the Holy Quran, there's a passage, okay, that says, it was so fascinating to me because the passage said, God created mankind and jinkind for the sole purpose of worshiping him. And in Islam, God has 99 names, attributes, unconditional attributes. Okay, and we're conditional beings. Okay, and so so from the Islamic view, it's as if like, okay, these two classes of beings have been created to connect with the system admin. Do you understand? The system admin created a user, there's mods, and there's the system admin. The system admin is beyond the world room. Do you know? The system admin is beyond the world room. The mods are in the world room. They're conditional created beings. We can't see them, and we're users. Okay? And there's, let's say, different types of users. So the purpose of these users in Islam is for all these souls. And how does God create in theology through a theological lens? God commands it into instantaneous existence. There is no which came first, chicken or egg. The moment was commanded into an instantaneous existence. So in other words, every soul on earth has been commanded into existence by the original power. The higher order, the original higher order process of all these simulated lower order processes. In other words, the relationship of the conditional creation with the unconditional original. In other words, we are souls presented in a realm to seek the source. And as poetically as I can say to all members of my species in 2026, we're looking for the original earth, the original world, the original self. It's not about good or evil. It's about awareness to what is the inner and outer. What is just a phenomenon be in front of your eyes, and what is all the meaning you give it. And to love truly means to love unconditionally. That's my point. And an unconditional being, you know, that love, does it have a format? Does it have an expression? That's the power of unconditional love. It's there. It's not a limited energy source, the unconditional presence of forces in our realm. Anyways, folks, thank you for listening. I hope this was an interesting lecture. There's more to say about this topic of love, of course. You know. And it's fascinating because at some point you realize the more, how do I say it, the more free an organism feels in its environment, the more it actually perceives of its environment. And our true presence is the calling of that greater freedom, I find. Everybody is seeking more an unconditional reality. Expectations have shifted from realistic conditional to, you know, semi-realistic, you know, more unconditional now for most humans, you know. Anyways, thank you for listening. Rise, mankind, rise in the presence of the one and only system admin. The original moment that all moments have come from. In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful, and the most advanced. Thank you. Take care, guys. And yeah, love it all before it's too late.